Somewhere between the 24th and 25th century, there is Picard. Somewhere between Burbank and the 170 is Roddenberry Entertainment. And somewhere between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. on a Monday night, there's Mission Log Live. I'm Rekha Sharma.
And I'm John Champion. Here we go, everybody. Picard has premiered. And that means for the next 10 weeks, we'll be talking to you, our Star Trek pals, about every episode.
What's been up with Jean-Luc? What is up with Rogue Synths? What will be up with those Romulans? We want to hear from you. Your take on all things Picard, your comments, your questions. Mission Log Live is all about telling us what you think. And you can do that very easily by clicking on the Zoom meeting link or by using the one tap from your smartphone, or you can just dial us up at 669-900-6833 and enter the meeting code you see on screen.
That's right. Now I've seen a comment or two online, and now I want to hear from you, all of you, in person, live, right now. You know what to do. Just like Rekha said, you click on the link, or you use the one tap, or you call 669-900-6833, and we will be here to chat with you.
And also, a big thank you for tuning in. You might be joining us live right now at facebook.com/missionlogpod or at youtube.com/Roddenberry-prod. That rhymes. Or you might be watching this video later, or you might be picking up the audio-only podcast later. Either way, we do appreciate you joining us. And all we ask is that you hit like, you hit share, and you tell others to join us for Mission Log Live to talk Trek.
Very well said. And by the way, there are people joining us right now live in the chat. And as I love to do every week, I want to say hi to all of these nice people. So there's Brett, there's Karen, there's, Norman Lau from Mission Log. Pleasant to see you there. There's Mr. Willie, there's Steve, there's other Steve, there's Elizabeth, there's Matt, there's other Karen, there's Barry. Barry pointing out all of our new graphics, which Tyler and Earl have been hard at work on for quite a long time. So thank you for giving a shout out to that. There's Warren, there's Eric. Eric saying, hi, John, hi, Norman, hi, Rekha. There's Jason, there's Chris, there's Josh, also saying hello, John, and hello, Rekha. So really nice to see everybody here. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight should be a lot of fun. And I'm just going to say it right up front. You should already know, spoilerific. We will just be spoiling everything to do with Picard. Rekha, you've watched it a couple of times now, the premiere episode. Yeah. And we're just not going to hold back with our feelings, our opinions, and chatting with each other and with all of you about your feelings on Picard. Oh, by the way, hey, before we even get to that, Josh says, Rekha, great in Discovery, maybe even better in Star Trek Online, one of the best voice performances that game has ever had.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so look at that. Josh, he's all Team Rekha right now. So,
I like this team.
Yes, it is a very good team. Now, before we get into our show, of course, every week we want to remind you of what's coming up on Mission Log Live, things to know about the podcast network. So next week, episode 2 of Picard on Mission Log Live, we'll be discussing 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Rekha will be back with us as she will be here for the run of Picard. I will not be here, though. No, I had planned a long time ago to be gone that first week of February before we even knew what the dates of Picard would actually be. So I'm very happy to announce that joining Rekha will be Norman Lau from Mission Log and Mission Log Live. That is a perfect team up. I kind of wish I could be here for that, but you know, it'll be you two and you'll be awesome. So can't wait to see or hear that one later. And then also on Thursday, this Thursday, January 30th, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. Join us in Sansar. That is sansar.com. We have a very special guest. We have Scott Mantz, who many of you know from being a host at STLV. He is also a host on Access Hollywood and many other sort of entertainment reporting shows. He'll be joining us to talk about the 55th anniversary of wrapping up The Cage. So that wrapped up in January of 65. And we want to do something around it. And now the dates are a little nebulous. The last day of actual shooting was in December of 64, but by the time they'd finished recording the music and working on their final mix, we're looking at late January of 65. So we thought, what a great time to invite people into the virtual Roddenberry Theater, have Scott talk about the impact of the cage. So join us. You don't have to have a VR headset. You can just sign up for free at sansar.com, use desktop mode. PC only at the moment, but hey, we're hoping they'll switch over at some point and give us Mac users some ability to join them. So if you have Oculus VR or HTC Vive, please use that. But desktop mode works just as well. We will see you then. Now, Rekha, before we get into our discussion, we like to poll our audience. Yeah, that's not as dirty as it sounds. So I will kick things off with last week's poll. Now, we asked you, this was right before Picard had premiered for everybody to see. We asked you how you want your Picard. Do you want it canon heavy, or do you want to forge a new path? Now, pretty much if you've heard any of Mission Log, you know that I'm not a slave to canon, but this is very interesting to me that after all the responses, canon heavy just barely beat out Forge a New Path. You were almost evenly split. 50.2% of you said canon heavy, 49.8% of you said Forge a New Path. Honestly, I'm really happy with what we got because I think that they, we're going to talk about this in depth, of course. I think they gave us a lot of new, but tied it back to things that happened in TNG history and Star Trek history without just beating you over the head with it. So you don't necessarily feel lost if you're just joining it, and you really get to spend time with the character. Oh, I'm giving away too much. We'll talk about it when we talk about the episode. So with that said, Rekha, can you fill us in on this week's poll?
Yeah. So this week's poll is, now that you've started Picard, are you all in it or do you fold? So I got to say, there's a lot of haters out there in the world.
Yeah. Just in general.
In general.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in the Star Trek world, there are also many.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that most of the people that watch Mission Log Live are way too cool to be haters.
Bingo.
And I think I'm right about that because all in, we have 95%.
Nice.
Which of course, only leaves 5 for the folders.
Yeah.
You're all in. You're here to play. You're here to stay. I like it.
Yes. I love that. And actually, I saw one comment that was saying, the pilot didn't grab me, but I'm going to hold off and then maybe binge later. So maybe that person will be all in just somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. All right. Well, here we go. And if you haven't watched it, and I cannot believe that anybody in our audience has not watched it, but just in case you haven't, and just to kick us off with some discussion tonight, we've got 3 people waiting right now to chat with us. I'm going to blast through a quick little recap of what happened on this week's premiere episode of Picard. You ready, Rekha?
I'm so ready.
All right, here we go. The year is 2399, and in Le Bar, France, Jean-Luc Picard is haunted by the nightmare of an attack on Mars. In Boston, a young woman is haunted by the very real attack on her and her boyfriend, which left him dead and her activated with some kind of super strength, wiping out all her masked assailants and forcing her to go on the run. It's been 14 years since Jean-Luc left Starfleet, and today he's being interviewed for a newscast commemorating, exactly what it is that we need to catch up on. When the Romulan sun went supernova, it was Picard who persuaded Starfleet to launch a rescue effort. Shortly after, an attack on Mars led by rogue synthetics sidelined the rescue, leaving millions of Romulans stranded. Picard resigned from Starfleet in protest. The interview ends abruptly when Picard is tired of being pushed by the reporter, but the broadcast is seen by the young woman we met in Boston. She makes her way to France, arriving at Chateau Picard The young woman, Daj, explains that she doesn't know why she's there or what happened to her, only that she felt drawn there and that she'd be safe with Picard. She's wearing an interesting necklace, 2 interlocked silver rings, something her father gave her. The next morning, she's gone. What's more, Jean-Luc had another restless night, this time dreaming about his late friend Commander Data, who's trying to finish a painting of a young woman, one that's mysterious but familiar. After waking, Picard goes to Starfleet archives where he calls up a similar painting, this one completed, and realizing it was painted by Data as well, titled Daughter. We catch up with Daj, who is still on the run, this time in Paris, and calling her mother on a holocommunicator. Mom isn't exactly who she seems, though, knowing full well that Daj had seen Picard before Daj even said she did. More worried now, Daj finds Picard at Starfleet and says she must be schizophrenic or something. He says no, she's special. Data painted her 30 years ago and called the painting Daughter. The memories she has of her family on Earth may be created, just as she was, lovingly, deliberately. The conversation is cut short as more masked assassins close in. It's a Romulan squad, and Daj fends them off, protecting Picard. She's not so lucky, though. One of the Romulans spits acid on her, and he self-destructs. Daj is no more. Picard is blown back, knocked unconscious by the explosion. When he awakens in his own home, Picard learns that the security footage of the attack doesn't even show Daj. Something is up, and he can't wait around for answers. He goes to the Daystrom Institute, the place where Daj was to begin studying before her demise. There he meets Dr. Agnes Girardi, who gives him the lowdown on synthetics. Their research got shut down after the Mars attack, and that's all that's left are the body of B4, some theoretical research. That's about it. Bruce Maddox, who is in charge of it all, is gone. Picard pushes to see if it's possible to have a flesh and blood synthetic indistinguishable from a human. No, but it's more complicated than that. Maddox was working on a theory about neuronic cloning. Imagine taking a single positronic neuron from a perfect model like Data and using that essence to create more. The way they were experimenting, the cloning was done in pairs. Twins. Cut to somewhere in space. A Romulan vessel enters a reclamation center, and a handsome Romulan with perfectly tousled hair steps out, introducing himself as Narek to Dr. Soji Asha, the identical twin of Daj, and wearing the same necklace with interlocking rings. Those two are maybe kind of sort of hitting it off. Oh, and that reclamation center is a Borg cube. Bye. There you go. What?
Great ending.
Rekha. Yeah.
It was a great, I loved everything you said.
It was a Borg cube. Borg cube now occupied by sexy Romulans.
Yeah. Tousled hair.
Tousled hair. It was very perfect. Like if I were the hair and makeup guy on that show, it was like, this isn't quite tousled enough. We need to make sure you're a rogue, rambunctious Romulan who can't be contained, as evidenced by your hair. All right.
I've had my hair tousled on set.
Oh, wait, on Discovery or Galactica or what?
Definitely not on Discovery. On Battlestar Galactica. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I've
had people come in and director call for more tossling.
More tossling. Okay. Discovery, you were a little more. You were very.
They straightened
rigid.
it. It was in a ponytail.
Yeah. Right. It was very rigid because you were tough. I mean, you are tough. You were just tougher in that. Yeah.
It's okay. You're not digging any holes. You're safe.
Okay. Let's talk with our first caller. We have David, who has been waiting tonight with some comments about Picard. David, how's it going tonight? Welcome to the show.
Hey, John.
Hey, how's it going?
David.
Hey, Rekha.
Nice to see you.
Yep. Good. I don't know. First of all, if no one can see Earl, but he's got a cat on his shoulder that's giving everybody a look. Very funny.
Yeah.
Probably the star of the show anyway.
Earl, friend of animals. Yes.
So
anyway, real quick before we talk Picard, I just want to say that for those who have not played Star Trek Online, I dabble in it a little bit, and Rekha's performance is I would say the best in that. So
Thank you.
Wow.
really, really great. Really blows up and expands the character of Landry, I think. So
That's
anyway,
awesome. Thank you
good
so
stuff.
much. You know,
Yeah.
those guys gave me a good arc to play with. So
Yeah.
very fortunate.
Very cool.
Well, anyway,
let's talk about Picard, man. What is up? Have you watched it many times?
3.
Okay. And
So I think I don't really know what to say, but other than some of the subtle things we saw in it, I don't know if there's much of this talk about how a lot of it refers back to episodes where Picard is challenging the Federation in a way.
oh,
And I don't know if anybody's really picked up on that, but it seems like all the things we see, the references to Measure of a Man, and other episodes there, it's just something I noticed about it, among other references. So I didn't know if get either of your take on it at all, or
well, Rekha.
I don't know.
You take it away, John. We were literally talking about this like
right before the show. Yeah. It's funny. So I'm of two minds about this, to be very honest with you. There is so much that I love about Picard, first and foremost being Sir Patrick Stewart's performance. I mean, just sitting there with that character, I don't care how long it takes to ramp up. There were some people who commented on last week's show, and I think commented on the poll again, talking about my statement that you really need to watch the first 3 to get sort of a clear picture of the story. Like 1, 2, and 3 are a little disjointed. They're giving you a little taste, a little slice. Then by the time we get to 3, it's like, okay, now I see where we're going. What I'm saying is that it tends to move slowly in some ways, but I'm good with that. I love that. I love sitting with that character and just getting to know him. The thing that concerns me, one of the things that concerns me is exactly as you put it, David. Are we simply setting up another example of another story where the hero has to fight against Starfleet and or the Federation, however we want to frame this? And a big part of me wants to say, can we please stop doing that story? We've had so many examples where maybe you just have the Admiral, maybe you just have the one character who is an authority figure that Kirk has to kind of take down or Picard has to take down. But we've really started to see a shift where it's the institution that we're saying has a problem or is corrupt. It's a little too early to tell with Picard if that's exactly where we're going. But if it is, it causes me a little bit of worry because, we hope that in the 24th century, this positive vision of the future that Gene Roddenberry set up, that humans are pretty good about setting up their institutions. They have moved beyond the petty things that separate us, like social status and religion and tribal beliefs and these types of things. And we get to work to the common good, the common better for all. But then every now and then we get this story where it says like, oh, this is all messed up. Starfleet is corrupt. And now we have to wait for one person to come along and fix it. I don't love that, but I do respect the idea that every now and then Star Trek has to do sort of, maybe not a reboot, but like a realignment. And remind itself and remind us like, hey, even if we stray off course, here's how we come back. Maybe that's where we get with this, but I don't want to see a recycled plot line. I want to see our biggest challenge come from out there. Star Trek is about what's going on out there. Yeah, it's about the human condition. It's about the human heart. But those challenges typically come from something beyond where we're just fighting with each other. Any thoughts, either of you? Sorry for my monologue.
It was a great monologue.
Oh, thank you.
Um,
Well, I'm starting to. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I've got also a monologue just waiting to come out. But first, David, do you have any thoughts in response to what John just said?
Well, yes, actually, I'm starting to wonder if it's trying to tell us that it's really the journey towards this that's the adventure, not we're not just instantly there. You know, we're not going to ever instantly be at this miraculous place where we've moved beyond certain deficiencies, maybe. Maybe it's the journey. Maybe, like you said, it's constantly going to be having to realign itself year over year, century over century. Maybe there's trying to tell us to, in this day and age, look out as well, that we may need a realignment now. We may need a realignment in 100 years. We may need a realignment in 1,000 years. So yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you also make some good points about it sort of looks like it's headed towards that same thing that Discovery season 1, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's there in a lot of this storytelling, and I think I like what you just said, David, about sort of being in the now is what I'm getting from that, and just reminded me of a moment when Garrett Wong's character. I'm sorry, it's
Harry
hard
Kim.
for me. What's his name?
And Ensign Harry Kim.
That's right. That's
right.
Forever Ensign Harry Kim.
He who shall not be promoted.
Yeah. That moment on Voyager when where he's, they think for sure that he's going to say, "I'm out of this mission because he's so stuck on going to Earth." But then he has this beautiful little speech where he just says, like, you know what? Yeah, I really do want to go to Earth, but right now, like where I am right now, there's nowhere I'd rather be than with this group of people doing what we're doing right now. And it was just a great moment because, we're all like that. We can all get really set and stuck on our goals, so much so that it takes us out of the journey. And life is about the journey. It's not about the destination because we don't have any control over what the destination is. And quite frankly, that's a blessing. It's a total blessing because I think life would be boring if we knew how it was going to end. If our plans actually all came to fruition, it's like, the universe has far more interesting plans for us. Anyway, to add to this discussion, the idea of what storytelling is really about to me is John and I were talking about this as well earlier. Is it's not necessarily that the institution and the person. It's all a metaphor for all parts of ourselves, and so the institution is that very thing, the ego that's set on the goal, that thinks that life has to be a particular way and very rule-oriented and very stiff and structured. And we all have that. A lot of that stuff for us is in our minds and in our egos. And that stuff is stifling. And our hearts, which is represented by Picard, which is represented by Burnham, that courageous heart. There's 2 words that Picard uses to describe Data in this premiere, which I love. He says he's all meaning and all courage. And I love that he sees him through those eyes, that's what he sees. And that force is what is needed for the world to be a better place within us, right?
Yeah. Well, interesting that you're saying, we're getting some really great comments in the chat right now as well.
Ooh, yes.
Sharil, I hope I'm saying that correctly. The journey is always what Star Trek is about, as David says, especially in the environment we are in these days. And then I want to skip down here to John Arminio. Hey, John, we haven't talked in a long time. I think considering the politics of the day, something Star Trek has always commented on, it seems like our own greatest threats come from within our own borders, from those creating fear and sowing hatred. We have to be our best selves to reject that hate and fear, and maybe it takes people like Picard to remind us of that. I don't disagree with any of that. I don't disagree that there are great stories in Star Trek and in other literature about the hero or the moral center, the moral heart, who is able to take on the corruption and the failures around us and get us back on the right path. I think Star Trek has done that many times. It kind of did the opposite in Star Trek VI, when Kirk was the one who was resistant and reluctant to try to see peace come about between the Federation and the Klingons. There were elements of corruption within both sides there as well, but institutionally they were on board with actually coming together and forging peace. What we had to do was stamp out those smaller elements that said, no, peace is not the way. We have to stay the way we've been because that's just the natural order of things. I want Star Trek to be relevant, and at the same time, I want Star Trek to point to something better, to say that not all of our stories have to be bleak. Not all of our stories have to start with the premise that we've failed at setting up our institutions. We've failed at being better than just our base desires. Like if I want that, I've got Westworld. Which it is, and I say I love Westworld, and I love the exploration of what is human nature, and are we violent, and are these things that we need, and are we truly that manipulative and awful? These are all interesting things to ruminate on in this science fiction construct. Star Trek to me started out as something different that said we did get beyond all that. We did manage to figure out a way to work together and create institutions that benefit each other. And then when we face challenges or adventures, they're somewhere else. They're outside. It's funny, Rekha and I having, again, this exact same conversation an hour ago. My example was in TOS, Kirk and Spock, representing us, are the ones who point to Lokai and Beale saying, yeah, the guy who's half black and half white, and the other guy who's half white and half black, they're idiots because they haven't gotten past their own racism. They're idiots because they haven't figured out that bigotry will only lead to their demise. Meanwhile, Federation and Starfleet, we presumably don't have that problem there. And that's what allowed us to do great things like go into space and explore our galaxy. So I will step down from my soapbox.
I will get on.
Okay, good, good, please.
Because absolutely, I think, we learn from our parents, right? We learn from what's being modeled to us. And at this moment, there literally is there's a million things that explore all the things that are negative within ourselves and all the things that we struggle with, and they're worthy of exploring. But how about just positive modeling? How will we ever learn how to talk to one another, how to be kind, how to get past these problems if we're not shown what that looks like? One thing I always go back to is, in order to create anything, we have to be able to imagine it first. It's literally how our bodies work. If we want to get out of bed in the morning, our brains, we at some level, it might be just a split second, but we think that our leg needs to move. And then that sends a signal, and we're off to the races, and we've gotten out of bed. If you can't imagine how to cook an egg, you literally can't make one.
Yes.
So can we feed an imagination? Can we feed a vision into the world that is beautiful? That is, we've figured it out. That is, everybody gets along. Nobody treats each other like garbage anymore. You know, and we don't throw our garbage into in the environment, and like all of these problems. I would love to see some modeling of how to do that properly, because that's how we learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because we could do
maybe it takes writers that have
well, right.
that are more evolved. Maybe we need a bunch of enlightened writers writing a show, get all the Buddhist monks or something into Hollywood and have them write a show, and maybe we'd all learn how to be better.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting what you're saying. I mean, there's a lot of Star Trek that has been written, it seems, from the premise now of, okay, things are really terrible. And institutionally, Starfleet and or the Federation have failed us in some way. So now we have to fix it. And I look back to TOS and something like the Corbomite maneuver, which is sort of hallowed ground for discussion on mission log. And, in one line, you have Kirk saying, there's no room for bigotry on my bridge. Done. Okay, boom, done. We're done there. And now we have established to the other people on the ship and the people watching in the audience, this ain't that show where people argue amongst each other because of their narrow-minded prejudices. With all that said, David, I want to say thank you because we have a couple other people hanging on the line right now. Thank you so much for calling in.
Thank you for listening to us natter on. It was such a good question that we couldn't stop talking.
I think it was the biggest one.
And
thank you
look,
guys.
Yeah, and as you know, man, call back because I feel like this will be a thing that we revisit throughout the run of Picard to figure out really what's going on here. So thanks, David. And we're going to get to the Vice Admiral here in a moment. And then we've got Martin on the phone waiting after the Vice Admiral. Very quickly, though, there's a question in the chat that I want to pose. Shereel again says, here's a question to Mission Log. Who do you think is our analog in Picard so far? I'm kind of struggling with that one because the simple answer is, well, we all want to be like Picard. Mm-hmm. We want to be that moral center and the heart of the show, which is truly him. We in general would probably say, well, we have political and social institutions that sometimes fail us or make decisions that may not be the right ones. So in the early 21st century, we on a bigger scale probably relate to what was happening in Starfleet to say, well, we're done with this whole Romulan thing. They were our enemies. We're not going to stick our necks out anymore to help save them. And we're going to run scared from the threat of these synths. The rogue synths. But I think the bigger answer is everything in Star Trek is all us anyway, the good and the bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. Was there anybody who you think you particularly identify with or you think is the representative us in Picard?
You asking me?
I'm asking you.
Oh. This is Rekha's first Mission Log Live.
You've had a long day too.
Yeah, I have. And I'm fighting off something, I don't know what, but luckily you can't get my gerbs on the internet.
Yay.
I haven't thought about that question, but as it was posed, of course, Picard is an answer, but also there's something about the twins.
Uh-huh.
And the metaphor of twinning in Jungian terms is something that is coming into consciousness, that wants to come into consciousness, is what the metaphor of a twin is whenever there's that in a story. And it's something that always fascinates me. And the whole idea of it being a peoples that is not a people's, or what we consider to be not a people's. Droids have rights too. Why are they outlawed? Why are they considered less than? I think that might be, the heart of the story in there too.
It's interesting, like the very moment you said that, like simultaneously in the chat, Daniel said, I think it could be Soji/Daj. We're trying to figure out who we are and what we are capable of.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So Daniel, Team Rekha, right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it literally, a big thing for me in this premiere is, to me, it's all about waking up. I feel like that's the big theme that this story is telling in the premiere. When are you going to wake up? Because that's where it starts. She gets activated. And then it's about like waking up to who you really are. She thinks she's just this person.
Yeah.
But actually she's this being made with love, made with what was the two words that what was it?
Courage and what's the other one? No?
Lovingly and deliberately
yes.
created.
Yes.
As we are lovingly and deliberately created, and waking up to who we are, our strength, our beauty, despite what the masses think, because the masses hate the synths, and even that metaphor within itself of like, what does the collective think about myself? Okay, I'm a person who's in my heart of hearts is really into something that maybe, doesn't hurt anybody, but nobody thinks it's cool. And so I'm going to just shove that down, whatever it is that makes you unique. It's like, no, man, wake up, find out what you're made of, that you can, like lightning seeking the ground. That's the kind of strength that she has. Everything inside her knew that she had to go to Jean-Luc. And that's, intuition, listening to oneself, discovering your intelligence is far beyond anything you ever thought. I'll stop talking now. I keep going.
No, that's very nice, very nice. And in addition to that, David in the chat says, episode 1 is never a good place to determine character status. See Lorca.
Yes.
So good
point.
Very good point there. So,
but this is where my musings take me, and I'm happy to, go on the journey. But I wonder if that's what I'm hit with in this premiere that I'm excited by. Is this question of can you wake up to who you really are?
See, this is what I like, is that right away, Picard, I feel like, is dealing with big themes, and this theme of identity is one of them, and it's very cool. That's the kind of thing that gets me excited about where we go over the next 9 episodes. So let's go to our next caller. I know that Martin is holding on, but we have the Vice Admiral first. So welcome back to the show, Vice Admiral. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, pretty good. How are you, John, Rekha?
Welcome. Doing all right.
We're doing great. Thanks for joining us.
Excellent.
So what's on your mind tonight, sir?
Well, what do you think, right? And you've already brought up a bunch of excellent points, and it's been a very good conversation. And there's lots of things we could talk about that could drift off into other places. But I'm wondering, one place we could look to drift off is if the Federation has, in fact, changed a bit to the point where Picard felt the need to, assume he couldn't do anything to fix it at the time. Is that maybe you had 90,000 deaths on Mars?
Yeah.
And how many deaths in the Dominion War, which wasn't that far ahead of that, right?
Oh, yeah. I couldn't tell you, but yeah, a lot.
So, maybe a lot of the most optimistic members of Starfleet are gone, at least at the time. I'm not going to say more optimism, more people with optimism won't appear or rise up in the ranks. I'm just wondering if, the type of admirals that we all know are not the type that we like, were the ones who, like we saw in Homefront, right?
Yeah.
Which I know jumped the timeline from the other show, but we're hoping to remilitarize. We're hoping to go isolationist, and maybe this gave those things and a few others gave them the opportunity to get there. And maybe we'll get a little bit more from Picard, not just that there was a one incident with the Romulans, but that it became more of the prevailing way of thinking in Starfleet.
Well, you make a really good point, and that's something that even as we have been talking about, maybe where are we going? Are we telling the right story? Should Starfleet be corrupt or isolationist, or say anathema to the principles that we think it should have? What I really like is that even in raising those questions, we've shown Star Trek taking a little bit broader view of what has happened in its own universe. So this kind of goes back to that poll question last week about canon heavy or forging a new path. We're telling a new story here, but those really big incidents like destruction at Romulus, like the defeat of the Borg, like what they kind of created here for the kicking off the plot line with the attack on Mars, these have long-term effects.
Right.
And even the death of Data. I'm glad that they didn't wave a magic wand and just say, okay, Data's back. I know
that was handled brilliantly. I love that.
It was, and it's something that Picard has been dealing with for 20 years. So these characters have an emotional life and an emotional depth that you don't always get out of Star Trek or I mean, for that matter, a lot of TV.
Mm-hmm.
So I really respect that. And that is one thing that I feel like if we are going down this path where there's something wrong happening at Starfleet or this isolationist tact that they're taking now doesn't feel right, hopefully we're creating some nuance and gray areas and places to explore in here instead of just sort of doing the very old TV thing, which is now here's the guy to set us all right. And you wave a magic wand or you kill the right bad guy and then you're back on the correct path.
Right.
I don't think we're going that way at all here. I think this is a much more thoughtful, much more nuanced show.
And if I can just say, that was one thing too that I was very happy to see, because I've worked on a lot of these stories that are really war stories. They happen to be in space, but they're essentially war stories. And if any of you know about my, Team Donut charity thing that I'm trying to do, PTSD is real, and that's what opens the show. And just because it's sci-fi doesn't mean that it's cleaner.
Yeah,
it's the same story. So I really appreciated that as well. That's all I wanted to say about that.
Steve in the chat had an interesting comment. He says, good point, the consequences of the Dominion War could well have changed the ideology of the Federation. But isn't the whole point of Star Trek that it wouldn't? Picard might be playing that role right here. So, yeah, here we have this sort of, Rekha, going back to something we talked about, and whether it's Star Trek or Galactica or whatever, without conflict, there isn't drama. Mm-hmm. The question is, where are we sort of contriving that conflict to happen? And in the Star Trek context, are we being maybe a little too precious about Starfleet and the Federation? Should we just let this play out and go, oh, okay, well, sometimes you need the reset. You need to be put back on the right path. I don't know.
When you're not at war, you're not suffering huge losses because of your ideals are perhaps, at least according to maybe some in your own organization, not the right ones. Those don't survive, right? I mean, they have to change in order to meet the demands of what's going on. And that sometimes takes a long, hard amount of work to get back to where you wanted to be.
Yeah, very true. Hey, if you don't have any other thoughts or
I always
ideas to
do,
share
but go
about
on,
it,
move on.
No. I do want to make sure that we have time enough for our other caller tonight, Martin, and then for a little station ID. But any other parting ideas for us tonight?
Well, sure. We've seen before. We've seen data in the flashbacks. Where's Lore? Just wondering.
Yeah, hey, look,
is he with Maddox somewhere? That's gotta wonder.
I know, right? I'm very curious to see if we see Maddox.
So exciting! What's gonna happen next?
It's very cool.
Yeah.
All right,
guys. Well, been great.
Thank you so much for calling in tonight. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
You will. Take care.
All right. Oh yeah, and hey, our very own Earl Green, our technical director, like Cisco says, it's easy to be a saint in paradise.
I love that.
Yeah. Hey, Rekha, if you would do us any honors here and just let the fine folks who are listening and or watching know about the Roddenberry Podcast Network.
Yes. So, besides this thing that we're doing here, perhaps you want to know what else is on the Roddenberry Podcast Network. Well, we have the other Mission Log show.
Yeah.
Not live.
Not live.
We have Priority One podcast, and you can join them for their live show Tuesday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern. We have Women at Warp. Love those ladies. We have the Trek Files. We have daily Star Trek news. And the newest member of the troop, Shabam!
Shabam!
Shabam! You can find all of those at podcast.roddenberry.com.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, have you been on Women at Warp?
At STLV, we had...
That sounds right, yeah.
One of the best panels that I have ever done.
Wow.
In my entire convention career.
Nice.
Yeah.
See, they know what they're doing.
They do.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, let us jump over to Martin, who has been patiently hanging on the phone. Martin, welcome to the show.
How you doing, sir? I appreciate your show.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
What is on your mind this evening?
I'm just concerned that I think that Alex Kurtzman and JJ especially Alex Kurtzman, since he's in charge of the TV series, is destroying Gene's vision of a positive future. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm noticing with all their shows like Beyond and Insurrection, Beyond and Into Darkness, it's like the Federation people is always the bad villains in it.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to see the same thing with Picard. It's like the Starfleet is in disarray. He lost faith in Starfleet. And I'm just starting to see that it's like they don't believe in Gene's vision. That's what I'm starting to be concerned about. Mm-hmm. And I think the fans are putting up with it. That's what make me even more concerned about, is that the fan base is putting up with people who do not really believe in Gene's vision of the future. And that's what I'm concerned about.
I think your concern is not unfounded. I mean, that's really been the focus of the conversation. That's interesting, Rekha. Like we had all these other notes and other things, but that has really become the focus of tonight's show.
Yeah.
Which is maybe a little unfair, only because we don't know what's coming 9 episodes from now, right? So maybe, just maybe, we'll have a little better sense of that as we get 6 or 7 or 8 episodes into this. But yeah, I mean, Martin, you're certainly onto something. Insurrection, yeah, you had Starfleet that was doing some shady stuff. You have examples in Discovery of Starfleet, maybe because they weren't thinking straight, they're blinded by sort of what's happening in the context of a war. But we got to the end of season 1 where we're asking ourselves, is it right or wrong to commit genocide against the Klingons? And you have to have somebody remind a Starfleet admiral, yes, that's wrong. We don't do that, you know? So I think maybe what you're looking at goes even further back than just sort of the current administration. Gene Roddenberry only worked on really the first 2 seasons of Star Trek, a chunk of Star Trek the Animated Series, and then the first really couple of seasons of The Next Generation. And even then, even though he lived until 91, he was doing less and less on the day-to-day.
But I've seen some of his interviews though. He was very he believed in mankind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. He absolutely did. But here's the thing. I will say this. He also said in an interview that's been quoted many times, he said, look, I hope that somebody comes along. There's somebody who's more creative, more talented than me. I hope somebody comes along and takes Star Trek and does something totally different with it. And they express their own vision. It's not just my thing. And believe me, man, I hear you, because I struggle with this a little bit, having done mission log as long as I've done, and being surrounded by things that are Roddenberry. And on the one hand, you have to say, well, here's a guy who had a singular idea for a TV show, but that TV show isn't just him. It's all the other very talented people around him, the people that he hired or the people who came after him, who said, we need to push the storytelling even further. But we all get to ask ourselves at the end of the day, even if we agree, okay, it's Star Trek, but what is the message that we're trying to say here? What are we actually trying to get across by telling this story? I don't know. I don't have a single solid answer for you, other than to say keep watching and keep listening, because this is exactly the kind of thing we like to pick apart on Mission Log and on Mission Log Live.
Hey, sir, can I say one more thing, please?
Please.
Sure.
Another thing I noticed, and I watch in Trek Yards today, when Picard was talking to the doctor, she said maybe 1,000 years. And I'm starting to believe that on Discovery, the season 3, that the Federation won't even be around. They destroyed Starfleet. I don't think that's what Gene Roddenberry wanted. That's why that guy made the comment about the flag. He said, I ain't seen this in a long time. I bet they're gonna destroy Federation. That'll piss me off. because Star Trek is about us. Star Trek inspired astronauts, engineers. It inspired a lot of people because we have a positive outlook of the future. I don't think Gene wants that future to be destroyed.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm concerned about. We got lazy people who's writing who don't understand the vision of Gene.
Well,
that's one thing. That's one thing I'm concerned about.
Well,
and I'm scared, to tell you the truth.
Yeah,
I feel for you, and as a Trek fan, honestly, when I was on Discovery, I was worried about that too. I didn't know how it was going to turn out. And I know not everybody's going to agree with me, but I was really worried. I thought, do these people get it? Well, let me tell you one thing. They're not lazy.
Yeah.
I've never met a lazy writer who's staffed on a series on anything that I've worked on. Yeah. I'm sure they exist, but let me tell you, they are working very, very hard on all of the Star Trek projects.
Okay, hey man, one of the things I noticed too, they don't seem to know canon. Like for example, on the Trek, on the Renegade cartoon.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
You know, there are some of the writing staff who do know a lot of the canon. It is 50 years of television, and there's so many things to juggle. So
yeah, that Rekha,
I can't even explain to you, and I'm not even in the writer's room, but just at least being on the show, I feel like I have a better sense than maybe the fan base does. They are working their butts off, and they are really doing their best. I can say that.
Do you think they get it, ma'am? Do you think they get it?
I think some of them really get it, and I think the ones that don't get it are doing their darndest to get it and to play catch up. I mean, some of the writers aren't old enough. They haven't had enough time to watch it all, or they've been watching other shows, but they're darn good writers, and they learn from the people who have watched all of the shows. And I will tell you what I felt relieved about when the product came out, and as I've gotten to know everybody involved more and more over the last few years, the heart of Star Trek, I believe, is alive in these shows. It's in the hearts of the actors. It's in the hearts of the creators. You know, everybody's different, but it's there. It's there and it's alive and well, I believe.
Yeah, Rekha, I want to back up what you're saying here because it's important to point out. Not everybody has to agree with every creative decision. Not everybody has to be on board with every story that's being told. But it is very important to understand that the people who work on these shows, not only do they work hard, but they actually care. They care very deeply about the stories that they're telling, about what they're writing, and about how those are presented. So it's definitely unfair to not be in those shoes and assume that they aren't heavily invested in what they're doing. By the way, I do want to read some comments here that are coming in. This very interesting conversation here. Matt says, claiming to know what Gene Roddenberry wants seems impossible at this point. He's been gone for 25 years. He initially didn't want Patrick Stewart. Look at how well it turned out. So that's a very good point there.
Yeah.
And then Chris hits on something that we talk about a lot on the Trek Files in particular, and I've mentioned several times on Mission Log, which is Roddenberry didn't articulate his utopian future until years after TOS. So yes, but there's room for interpretation. That kind of goes back to this thing that I was talking about before, which is that Gene had certain ideas, but he only worked on the shows for a relatively small period of time compared to how much Star Trek has been created. And a lot of that stuff that we attribute to what Gene was doing or what quote unquote Gene wanted, it's a bit unfair. We can go back to some college lectures in the 70s, and that's what I know that Larry, and I've kind of adopted it on my own too, what Larry likes to call the gurufication of Gene.
Yeah, I mean, he was a flawed human being, just like the rest of us.
Yeah, and so he's kind of making these grand proclamations about this is the future. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, you had a show that you were just trying to keep on the air. For, you know, the first and foremost, that's what it was about. And a lot of the other stuff came much later. Martin, I want to thank you for calling in and chatting with us and giving us some challenging, interesting stuff to chew on tonight. I really appreciate it. And I also want to invite you to stick with Picard and stick with our discussion on it, because who knows what we're going to get. And we might all end up in very different places 9 weeks from now when we wrap it all up, okay?
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper, my friend. Have a good night.
Same to
you. All right. Rekha, I'm just curious because we only have just a few minutes to go here. I'm curious, and you don't have to give details. You don't have to name names or anything. But as somebody who went from one franchise, from Battlestar Galactica, which is just pulling very loosely from some source material, but very consciously rebooting. When you go into something like Discovery, is it a different attitude? It is a different sort of care and handling of a property. Could you tell?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Different ball of wax.
Yeah.
Yeah, whole different feeling on set. I don't even know. I mean, one thing is all the weight of the canon, the weight of this massive show. I mean, the original Battlestar Galactica was like a blink of an eye in comparison to what Star Trek is. So, it was huge, and we were all very aware of it and very much trying to hold up what the show is about and hoping that we didn't mess it up. And I don't think anybody felt like that on Battlestar. Maybe in early days before I got there was a lot less on the line, that's for sure.
Yeah. Brian in the chat says, in 2020, you don't get resolution at the end of every episode. You have to make it through the season these days. That's very true. So
Great point.
We really don't know where we're going to end up. And that's an important thing to keep in mind as we go through this. So it's really tough to say, like, and I even go back to my own thoughts on this, like, are they screwing up Starfleet?
Yeah,
Is this going to be another example of the one person who has to save Starfleet in the series? We really don't know.
But and also, like, you know, from the 50s and 60s to now, a lot has changed in television. And honestly, in the spectrum of television, you know, where like shows like Succession, for instance, are huge, you know, where everybody is like a complete jerk and corrupt and awful. Star Trek, in comparison, Picard, in comparison, has a lot of positivity in it. You know, can you imagine Game of Thrones would have probably made Gene Roddenberry keel over on the spot if he had seen something that intense. So, relatively speaking, in our times, it's very positive show.
Well, hey, I thank you so much for doing this, and I so look forward to the next several weeks that we get to do this together and have these deep conversations. I'm going to leave us before I read the credits with a comment here from John in the chat. John Morales says, now that we have had this discussion on the first episode, the same discussion we have every time there's a new show, I hope we can move beyond it for future shows and just talk about what we have rather than what everyone thinks Star Trek is.
Love that.
Hallelujah. Well said. That is a great comment to end with. So thank you, John. Thank you, everybody who's watching and listening. Thank you so much, Rekha. And with that said, Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, executive producer Rod Roddenberry, technical production on Mission Log Live by the incredible Earl Green. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from the Roddenberry Podcast Network. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, give us a look at patreon.com/missionlog. Thank you to everyone who joined us live or later, and we will talk to you next week.